guys, so today I have to do the video in my car. I've got my in-laws visiting and my kids are out of school. They're off track, so the house is crazy. And you know, when I make these messages, I like to have peace and quiet so I can think and so you can hear me. So I found this beautiful quiet location and I'm just going to go ahead and do today's message from here. So I just want to start by just kind of reminding everybody that in addition to my YouTube channel, I also have a spiritual blog where you can find a lot more topics and a lot more posts. So if you want to get on there in addition to this, it's just another great resource for all kinds of articles and all kinds of different topics. Some of the best posts on my blog are actually the older posts. So I encourage you to just kind of dig around on there and see what you find. I've been getting a lot of emails and a lot of comments coming in, which is awesome. And I absolutely love hearing from my readers and my viewers. I think it's amazing. I feel like we're making this connection. I just really enjoy hearing your thoughts and your feelings about the videos and also the experiences that you're so willing to share. It's just been incredible. So thank you for sharing. And I just want everybody to know that I do my best to respond to every email and every message that comes through. So if you haven't received a reply from me, check your spam box, see if it's there, but I promise you I'm responding to everyone. And I try to do it within 24 to 48 hours. So I appreciate you reaching out to me and it's been a lot of fun. It's been really rewarding reading your thoughts and feelings and connecting with you. So I have to say that when I made my Halloween video, that video that I did on false traditions, I had no idea that so many people were going to share it and comment on it and reach out to me, and it's been incredible. As people started tagging my name in a lot of their posts, I started going around and reading the different posts where people were sharing it and reading the different comments. And for the most part, it's been really positive. There have been a lot of people who are in support of the message and who maybe were kind of feeling that way already, but hadn't heard that from anybody else or were kind of afraid to come out and say that they felt that way. But because of the video, they've now had the courage to kind of voice their opinion of support. So it's just been amazing. My sister and I were talking about this the other day, and it almost feels like, you guys, that there's a movement that's starting. And we were just kind of joking around on the phone, and I said, you know, you watch, in a few years we'll be talking about this like somebody who's sober, and they'll say, oh, I've been clean for 5 years, or I've been clean for 6 months. We'll be saying that about Halloween. I haven't been celebrating Halloween for 5 years. You know, for me, it's been 10 years or whatnot. She just kind of jokingly said to me, hey, be clean of Halloween. And I just kind of heard in my mind, hashtag be clean of Halloween. So I want to put that out there, you guys. I think this is the perfect way for all of us to connect. For everybody who's on board with refraining from Halloween and replacing it with something better to create new and better traditions for your families. This is an easy way to do that. If you want to share your ideas on social media and just use the hashtag be clean of Halloween, it's something that I feel like is going to catch on. It seems like there's so many people out there who are already reaching out and saying, hey, let's connect, let's share ideas. What can I do? Or how can I get around this or that? Or what suggestions do you have for this scenario or that scenario? And I think this would be a great way to have those topics and conversations all over social media. So I'm going to put that up here, hashtag be clean of Halloween. And go ahead and share your pictures, your ideas, new traditions that maybe you're starting with your own family. And I think it'll be a lot of fun and a great way for us to connect with each other and share those ideas. Because my false tradition video has been so big, because of all the feedback that I've been getting, all the comments that have been coming in and all of the emails, I felt like I would take the beginning of this week's message just to add some final thoughts to it and also give you another update. So last night I received a phone call from a family member, and this family member actually apologized to me about the way they had treated me about all of this. This was a family member I had mentioned earlier in last week's video who really struggled with my decision to no longer celebrate Halloween. And this person hadn't seen my video at the time and was very upset about my decision. And I think what I mentioned in that video was it felt like I was being attacked. And this family member came and apologized to me, and I wasn't expecting that. It just goes to show that if you stick true to how you feel, and you stick true to what you believe, and you take a stand, and you don't back down, but you do it with love, and you do it with kindness, and you do it with a prayer in your heart, and you don't judge other people who don't feel the same way that you do. It just goes to show that a lot of times it can have a good outcome, and something like this does not have to separate families or cause division in relationships. Okay, so since making the decision to no longer celebrate Halloween, I have become so much more sensitive to all of the symbols and all of the signs and images that have to do with that tradition. I walk into the grocery store just to get some groceries, and there it is. It just kind of hits you in the face. It's the first thing you see when you walk in the grocery store. Just all of the displays out front, outside of the store, and in the store. And if you want string cheese, this time of year, you're going to find string cheese that's marketed with vampires and mummies and bats. And if you want to buy donuts or cookies or even bread, I mean, I saw it everywhere. It's funny, you don't see this with Valentine's Day or St. Patrick's Day. You don't see that. But with Halloween, it's marketed on everything. I mean, from string cheese to Kleenexes. Everything is marked with those signs and symbols, and it's really tough to get around that. It's just crazy. I never realized this until my eyes were opened. I never realized how much Halloween is a part of our culture. It is crazy. So my in-laws are here visiting, and my husband really wanted to take them to Lagoon because we have season passes and we live so close to Lagoon, and my husband works right across the street from Lagoon. We go there all the time, and we haven't been in a few weeks. And so he wanted to take them. Because it's that time of year, I knew that they would have decorated for what they call Frightmares. And I thought that I would just spend most of my time in Kittyland with my kids. And then my daughter and I were going to leave early anyways. We were going to leave at 4 o'clock so that we could get an early start to women's conference. Now, all of the Halloween activities at Lagoon don't happen until 5 o'clock. So that was the plan. And so we get there, and my in-laws are from Germany, and they just think this is really cool. They're seeing all these decorations everywhere. So we walk into the park, and as I look around, all the things that used to make me smile and get excited, I actually didn't feel that way anymore. It was so interesting to me. I would look at a jack-o'-lantern, or I would look at a ghost or a tombstone, and I would just get a strange feeling. It was like kind of a little bit like a sinking feeling, like a disappointing sinking feeling. It's hard to ignore. It's all around you. And that's one thing I want to point out is the culture that we live in. It's really hard to step away from all this. It's kind of in your face everywhere you go. The bank, you know, restaurants, the mall, everywhere you go, everybody has their Halloween stuff out. We went to go buy hand soaps today. In the soap and lotion store at the mall, everything was Halloween. I mean, it's everywhere. So it's one of those things I like to point out. It's just like we've been told to be in the world, but not of the world. So we're going to be around these things. There's no avoiding them. They're going to be all around us. It's just a part of our culture, but it doesn't mean that we have to bask in that and participate in that if we don't want to. If we don't want to invite that into our families and into our homes, we don't have to do that. So as we walked into Lagoon, we noticed this huge advertisement. Here it is. Take a look. So this is for a new attraction at Lagoon this year called Seance. And now you actually have to pay additional money if you want to participate in this. I'm not quite sure what it is. I think it's a show. But I saw that and I just couldn't believe, you know, a lagoon is a place where families go and where our children go and teenagers go, our youth go there to have fun and spend time with their friends. And they're being surrounded by all of this and all of these images and all of these opportunities, and it's inviting so much darkness in. But we're advertising it as this is something fun, this is something exciting, this is just what you do, it's Halloween. You're going to talk about darkness. You know, it's funny because things that are of darkness, things that are demonic, things that we're always taught to stay away from, for some reason it's okay when it's Halloween. Then it's okay to talk about witches and witchcraft and spells and seances and ghosts and spirits and tombstones and haunted graveyards. And it's okay to talk about all of these things because it's Halloween. But any other time of year, you don't talk about these things. We don't bring up things that are demonic or dark or of witchcraft. We just don't. It's become so much a part of our culture that it's actually spilled outside of Halloween and outside of the month of October. It's spilled into our media, into our movies, into some of the most popular best-selling books that our children read, into amusement theme parks all over the world. It's just so in your face, it's everywhere, and it's just become so normal, so acceptable that people don't even think twice about it, that there could be any kind of harm in that whatsoever. I just wanted to share this experience that happened to me. So we were at Lagoon, and they, of course, you know, stamp your hand when you go in. So we all had our hand stamps, and they were just blue hand stamps. I didn't even think to look at it because I've been to Lagoon so many times this year. It's usually just an arrow, or, you know, the way that they stamp it, you can't even see the stamp. Usually you just get half a stamp. So I never even pay attention to the hand stamp. It wasn't until we had been there for like 3.5 hours or so that I looked down at my hand stamp and realized it's a witch hat. And I thought, oh my goodness, it felt horrible. I just wanted to wash it off my hand. It felt like I had been marked with a mark of witchcraft, and I didn't like that feeling. Before I had made my false tradition video, before I had learned all that, it really wouldn't have mattered to me. I just would have thought, oh, that's funny. It's a cute witch hat. But now, knowing what I know, I didn't like that. I wanted to wash it off my hands. And so my sister was texting me, and I took a picture of my hand and I sent it to her, and I'm not even kidding. I said, they have stamped my hand with a curse symbol. My hand has been cursed. I sent that to her, and she thought, wow, I can't believe that. Well, anyways, my daughter and I, we leave at 4 o'clock. We head home, we get changed and get ready so we can go over to women's conference. And I said to my daughter, let's go ahead and wash these off our hands. I don't feel right about going to women's conference and trying to feel the spirit with a symbol of witchcraft and curses on my hand. And she said, oh yeah, Mom, I feel weird too. So she went into the bathroom, she washed hers off. I was fixing my hair and changing out of my clothes, and then realized what time it was, and so we run out to the car, we drive over to the church, and then as we sit down to eat dinner, that's when I realized, oh my goodness, I forgot to wash it off. And it felt so strange that I actually pulled my sleeve over my hand to hide it. I was kind of embarrassed. I didn't want that on my hand. So we get home from women's conference, we go into the house, and it's really cold, and my daughter says, oh Mom, make hot chocolate. So I thought, yeah, that'll be fun to make hot chocolate for the in-laws. And so I go right ahead, I start making the hot chocolate, I'm cooking it over the stove, and then I decided to look for these small little crystal mugs with handles, and I never used my crystal. This was actually handed down from my mom. So I climb up into the cupboard and I grab all these glasses, and I come down and I go to put them on the counter, and as I'm setting them on the counter, there was one, and right as I set it on the counter, it exploded in my hand. I mean, I've never experienced anything like this. All of my family was there watching. They've never seen anything like this. It exploded in my hand. It made the loudest sound, and a shard of glass right here, I took the Band-Aid off. A shard of glass went right into my hand, and this flap of skin came wide open, and sorry, this sounds a little graphic, but it was just oozing blood everywhere. It was running down my arms, it was all over the counter, and I just sat there in shock. And so, you know, I rinse it off, and my husband's helping me bandage it up. We get it all taped up and good to go, and it hurt really bad. And as I'm looking at my hand, I flip it over, and there is that witch symbol on my hand. I still hadn't washed it off. And in that moment, I felt the Spirit tell me, your hand was cursed. And in that moment, as I looked at that symbol and I was reminded of the text that I sent my sister, that I had been marked with the symbol of a curse and that my hand was cursed. And there it was being manifested. And I took that as a sign from the Lord that there is a real power behind these symbols. It was another witness. And fortunately, I had to experience that, but it taught me a lot. I tried to tell myself earlier in the day, well, it's just a stamp, it's just ink. I'm gonna wash it off when I get home. But of course, as we can see what happened, I really felt that that experience was a loud and clear message, not just from the adversary, but from the Lord, letting me know that this stuff is real. There is a real power behind these signs and these symbols. They're not something that you mess around with. They're not meant to be cute and fun, but that's how we invite them in because they seem harmless to us, and it's for the kids. It's fun. Cute little witch hats, cute little witches, right? But no, there's a real power behind them, a real curse, a real negative energy, and that was manifested. I had to learn that again. An additional witness, which I wanted to share in this video just to show you how real that power is. And as we were walking around Lagoon, this year they had witches everywhere, and they had out this giant storybook. The children were seated all around, and the witches were teaching them spells and teaching them all about witchcraft, and they were making it cute and fun for the kids, and then passing out the kids treats. And there just was something so not right about that. I just did not get a good feeling. And then there was another area for the children where there was a woman dressed as a vampire, and everything around her was bats and coffins and blood and vampire teeth, and she was asking the kids questions. What's a vampire? What do vampires drink? What color is blood? And she was all excited and cheering for the children to test their trivia on how much they knew about vampires and all of that, everything to go with it. And the more they knew, the more treats they got. They were being rewarded for giving her the right answers. And again, there was just something so off about that. So anyways, moving on, we go to church on Sunday, and I'm sitting there in primary. I'm a primary teacher. I teach sunbeams. And I'm sitting there on the front row, and they start passing around these to all the women. And here it is on my lap in church, and we're holding these, and it's for a Halloween activity for the elders quorum. And all the children are seeing these, and all of a sudden they start talking about Halloween and how excited they are, and you can hear them talking about how scary it's going to be, and ooh, scary Halloween. And we're sitting there in primary, and the pianist is playing that beautiful prelude music. She's trying to bring the spirit in, and now all the children are talking about Halloween. Well, then one of the members of the presidency got up to do sharing time. And she asked the children, because this week is conference, and she said, who knows what exciting event is happening this week? And she waits, and all the children yelled out, Halloween! And everyone started laughing, of course. And to me, it was just an eye-opener. Wow, these kids are more excited about Halloween than they are for general conference. Imagine that, right? She just said, no, it's conference. And the kids just kind of looked at her confused, and it was quiet in the room. And then they started talking about Halloween again, and so excited. What are you going to be? What are you going to be? Here's what I'm going to be. The candy. Oh, it's so fun. It's going to be so spooky, so scary. And as they continued to pass these around, these images were getting the kids all kind of hyper and excited and a little bit spooked. And they were talking about the pumpkins and the jack-o'-lanterns and having these conversations in the primary room during the beautiful prelude music that was to invite that spirit of our Savior in. And there was just something, again, that was so off about that. And I feel that I'm so sensitive to this now. I don't know about you, but I'm so sensitive to this now. And before, it never would have fazed me. I never would have thought much about it. But now, knowing what I know, I don't know, it feels so strange. It feels so off. So then my daughter, I was going through her homework folder my daughter who's in 4th grade, and I pull out this poem, and it's a Halloween poem. Here it is. Take a look at it. So did you see that line that said, "I know I saw a goblin thing who's laughing in my room"? Pretty creepy, very demonic. And all I have to say about that is I brought this poem to her and said, "Oh, what is this?" And she said, "Oh, Mom, we had to memorize that poem. We had to say it over and over and over until we had everything memorized. That was our assignment." And I thought, oh, you know, from everything that I teach and from everything I've shared in my past videos, you know about the power of repetition and words, the power of saying words over and over and over. It's how we program our minds. It's how we program our subconscious. I just knew it wasn't good that she had programmed these words into her mind. And we were at a restaurant, and all of a sudden she just blurted it out and said the entire poem from beginning to end. And I thought, what are we having our children read? What are we having them do? Why are we teaching our children that there's goblin things in their rooms laughing at them at night? I mean, what children aren't going to be able to sleep at night after reading these poems and memorizing them and saying them over and over in their minds? I just thought, gosh, you know, our children are so precious. And we're taught to be like our little children. We're taught to learn from them and be like them. And they're so precious. And here we are filling their minds with these dark images and teaching them that when they go to bed at night, there's goblin things laughing at them in their room. And as a mom, I just didn't feel right about that. And now I know this is probably why people homeschool. I'm sure this is one of the reasons why people homeschool, because you have more control over what your kids are being taught. The old me, that wouldn't have fazed me one bit. But the new me, oh, I just didn't like it at all. It really just didn't feel right. So a lot of the comments that had been coming in were women asking me ideas of what to do to kind of replace Halloween. Something that they could do to substitute it or to start a new tradition. They were wanting ideas. I actually wrote a blog post about that the other day, and I posted it on my blog. If you want to click on the link in the comment section below, it'll take you right to that post. But for me, as I had been pondering on this, I really got the feeling that I wasn't to substitute anything with Halloween, that I wasn't to make October 31st in any way special. Because whether you call it a fall party or a harvest party, no matter what you call it, it's still something you're doing to replace Halloween. It's something that you're doing, even though it's better, it's something that you're doing so that you don't feel like you're missing out, or that you're missing any of the fun, or that you're being left out. And the whole point of forsaking Halloween is to sacrifice all of that. To sacrifice the things that I love, the things that I loved to do, the things that were such a part of my life growing up, to give it all away for something better. And it doesn't have to mean something better on that day, but just to have the spirit in my home, just to have these symbols not on my door, not on my porch, not throughout my home, so that I could have more of that spirit in my home. That was the something better. However, as I've said in my post, I don't feel like it's a day where we should be doing nothing. I heard the word come to mind, spiritual warfare. And I thought, since October 31st is a day of darkness and can really be the darkest day of the year, with so much evil that goes on that night, it really wouldn't be a bad idea to do all that you can that day and that night to bring more light into this world. So I put it out there if you want to share your ideas, things that you can do that bring light into the world, and everything that you do. If you're doing it to bring glory to the Lord, and if you're doing it to bring more light into this world, you really can't go wrong. So I share a bunch of things there that you can do. Now what really surprised me is I felt like the best place that I could be on October 31st would be in the temple. There's no better place to be, right? So I went to go look at my temple schedule to see the hours on October 31st. And all of the temples that are in my area close early on October 31st. And I can only imagine that that's so people can go home and celebrate Halloween. And that really saddened me. It was just so strange, you guys. I looked at the temple schedules outside of Utah and the temples all throughout the world, and they all have normal operating hours on October 31st. And I thought, wow, this is how deeply rooted this tradition is in our culture. This false tradition has really taken over our culture so much that the temple closes so that people can go celebrate it. So I'm not able to go worship in the house of the Lord because of Halloween. There's just something so off about that. It just doesn't feel right. Okay, now let's talk about women's conference. I don't know about you, but I thought that was the best women's conference I have ever attended. I really feel like it gets better and better every year. And I tell you, everything that I heard and felt during this conference was everything I've been experiencing lately. It was almost like another witness of everything I've been doing, everything I've been feeling, everything I've been sharing with you. It was all in this conference. It was amazing. So I want to start by talking about the first speaker, Sharon Eubank. I absolutely love her. And this was exciting because if you follow my blog, before she was put in, I discovered Sharon at the very beginning of this year. So at the very beginning of 2017. And I had found some videos that she had done. She had spoken at some of those Fair Mormon conferences. And the videos that I found were incredible. The topics that she spoke of, it's almost as though she's so ahead of her time. These topics that she was talking about women and where she sees women in the church. She was speaking of changes that are coming in the church for women and how women are really going to rise up in the latter days and take on amazing roles in the gospel and in building up the kingdom. And she talked about things that you would never hear spoken of in sacrament meeting, that you would never hear talked about in Sunday school. These were really deep topics. Some of this wasn't even doctrine. Some of this was just Sharon's feelings, and she was sharing that. Now, a lot of people typically would say, you know what, if it doesn't come from the prophet and it doesn't come from the apostles, it's not truth. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to accept that. And here was this woman, Sharon Eubank, sharing these beautiful gems of the Spirit. I mean, beautiful gems that you just don't hear anywhere. And I was eating this up. I was loving it because the things that she was sharing were things that I had been receiving. These were impressions that I had also been receiving from the Spirit, and I had been writing them in my journal. And I felt I was the only one feeling this way and thinking this way. And I felt that, you know, I kind of felt all alone. Like, this is something I can never share or talk about because nobody would understand and nobody would get it. And it doesn't come from the prophet. It came to me from the Spirit. So only I can understand that. And here was this woman, Sharon Eubank, sharing these very things that I had felt impressed of by the Spirit, that I had written down in my journal. And she was sharing them openly in a conference. It was amazing. I loved her message so much that I shared her videos in an entire blog post. And I shared her videos and I shared her quotes that were about the priesthood and women and these incredible gifts and spiritual power that women have that they're not even accessing, but that they're going to be accessing, that's coming. It's around the corner. And she talked about this. And I wrote a whole blog post about this, and I remember at first being a little bit scared, being a little bit worried because I thought, oh, people could take this the wrong way. And because it didn't come from the prophet and it didn't come from the apostles, you know, people could be offended by this. They could be upset by this. They could get the wrong idea. So, you know, it was kind of walking on a line there. It was kind of going out on a limb, sharing that message. But just as I had shared in my last video, the Spirit had shared with me the other day, I had felt through the Spirit the other day that when the Lord takes you out on a limb and you don't feel comfortable going out on that limb, you need to trust Him. Sometimes that's the best place to be because that's where He's guiding you and that's where He is. And sometimes it isn't until we go out on a limb that doors open up for us. So I shared this video with hesitating just a little bit, but I put it out there, and I'm not even kidding. Weeks later in April General Conference, they announced the changes in the presidency, and I was listening on the radio. I mean, I wasn't even watching it on TV. And when I heard the name, I was out in my garden, and when I heard the name Sharon Eubank as a counselor in the first presidency of the General Relief Society, I thought, oh my goodness, and I felt it from head to toe. I felt the Spirit from head to toe, and I looked up at the sky. I looked up at heaven, and I said, thank you. And I thought, my goodness, here's this woman, and she's so ahead of her time with things that she shares. And I shared her message. I was bold and I was brave, and I shared her message on my blog post. And now she's serving in the General Relief Society presidency. Oh, I was so excited. Now, it didn't feel so strange to be sharing these messages because of where the Lord has placed her now. And I remember when I first heard her messages, I thought, oh, we need someone like her in a leadership position in the church. If only she could be, and I remember saying that, if she could be in the General Relief Society presidency, wow, amazing things will be in store for the women of the church. And amazing things will be in store for the future of the church. And so that was just a confirmation to me that the places I'm being led and the people that I'm being led to and the topics that seem so outside of the box is exactly where the Lord's leading me to. We're ready. We're coming into that day now where we're ready. We're ready to hear these things. We weren't ready before, but we're ready now. Our ears are being opened. Our eyes are being opened. And these messages that seemed so out of the box so many years ago are now much more relevant to the time that we're living in, and we're ready for these messages. We're ready to be told these things. We're ready to step into our calling and fulfill our divine destiny. We're ready to do amazing things in these latter days. And that was just another confirmation to me from the Spirit, not to worry. When the Lord leads me to things and He leads me to people that seem a little outside of the box and out on a limb, it's okay. That was a witness to me that it's okay. Don't be afraid. If you feel the Spirit testify to you, that's all that matters. You can have peace. It's funny because I had people say that about my video. I had comments come in and people said, you know, the way that you feel about Halloween is the same way that I've been feeling about Halloween, or we decided to stop celebrating last year, and they would say, but I was afraid to tell my family, or I was afraid to share it on social media. I was afraid to let anybody know because I was afraid of what they would say or the way that they would treat me. But now because you made this video and you've opened up the door and let the cat out of the bag, I feel like I have the confidence now to share your video and support this message and be vocal about it. And you know, that's how change happens. It usually always starts at the grassroots. You start within your family and your own network of friends, and you just share what makes you feel good. You share what's been blessing your life. And then other people take note of that, and it makes them feel good, and they recognize the blessings that you're receiving, and they want some of that. They want to be part of that. So then they make those choices, and then they share, and it's just kind of a ripple effect. And then it works its way up, and it works its way up, and then if enough people are making those changes, the world will take notice. So I love in her message, she talked about, I've got my notes right here, she talked about the women of the church, and she mentioned specifically a prophecy that President Spencer W. Kimball had given towards the end of the late 70s, and it was in a conference talk that he wasn't able to give because he was ill, so his wife read it for him. She read it on his behalf. And in that talk, he shared a prophecy. So the outcome of how the church grows will be largely based upon righteous women of the last days. And Sharon Eubank said that's happening right now. This prophecy is being fulfilled. And then she went on to talk about social media, how women of the last day need to use social media to spread the messages loud and clear, to spread truth, to spread righteousness, to spread light. And I know that's what we're all doing. I know that's what you're doing. I know that's what I'm doing. I'm using social media as a tool. And I know a lot of times people will shun away from it and they'll be afraid of social media. They'll want to take breaks from it. They notice all the negative about it. And, oh, I'm taking a 3-month hiatus from Facebook. But if you're feeling the need to do that, you're using social media for all the wrong reasons. You know, the Lord has given us this great technology so that we can be instruments in His hands, so that we can share our experiences and share what it is we're learning. And by doing so, we find out that we're not so alone, that we're all kind of on the same page. We're all on that same journey. A lot of us are learning the same things right now. We're going through the same experiences, but because we're not all sharing, we kind of feel alone. We feel like we're the only ones. But as soon as we start sharing on social media, all of a sudden we find out we're not so alone. And a lot of us are going through the same things, and we're learning the same wonderful, incredible truths. And it's life-changing. I loved how she talked about that incident in the news. I had seen it because of social media, where there was, I forget which beach it was, but there were some tourists who were drowning in the ocean, and people were waiting for rescuers to arrive, but it was taking so long that they worried that these tourists were going to drown. And so there was a woman and her husband who decided to get creative and come up with a solution. This woman felt confident in her skills. She had been taught how to swim in a riptide. And so she got everybody on the beach to link arms and go out into the ocean. And she pulled in with her husband on these boogie boards. They pulled in all these victims and then passed them down the human chain back to safety towards the beach. And she likened that to social media and what we as women can do with it in these latter days. That if we link together, when we share our experiences and we link together and we share the truths that we're learning, we can bring people who are drowning. Think of this in a spiritual sense. We can pull in those who are drowning and together bring them to shore. And I just thought that was powerful. I felt the Spirit from head to toe witness to me the truth of what she was saying. She listed some points of how we could best do this. And the first one, she said, we need to be righteous. We need to be righteous women. We need to be repenting and always helping. Number 2, articulate. She said we need to express ourselves freely. And, you know, I have to say, what I loved about that is, you know, when I first started the Happy Lady, if you don't know that story, watch my very first video on my YouTube channel under the Happy Lady playlist. My very first video on there, I share my experience of how this all started. And it all came from a dream. I had a dream that I was to go throughout the world and spread a message of happiness and joy and hope to people all throughout the world. And the way that I was doing it in the dream, I was flying in this car and I had like a megaphone and speakers, and I was broadcasting this message all over the world. And when I woke up, I heard a voice say in my mind, you are to make videos on YouTube. You are to share messages of hope and joy on YouTube. And I was so excited, and it all came to me, you're to be the Happy Lady. And it all came to me, and I started doing it. During the first year that I had been doing this, I was actually hesitant to have it centered around the gospel and centered around my religious beliefs, because I felt by doing that I would limit my audience. And I wanted this message to reach the whole world and to reach everyone. So I felt like I couldn't be free in expressing what I really wanted to say, because I couldn't share that side of me because I didn't want to offend anyone, and I wanted to pull in a bigger audience. So for a long time, I was very careful about what I shared in my videos. But it wasn't the best feeling because I felt like I was holding back. There was so much more I could be sharing and so much more light I could be putting out in these videos, but I wasn't doing it because I was afraid. You know, the things that I was sharing, it wasn't anything unique. It wasn't anything that was that different. These were messages and topics that you could find anywhere. And so that showed. I wasn't getting a whole lot of traffic. I wasn't getting a whole lot of comments or emails coming through just once in a while. And, you know, I was okay with that. You know, I just figured that that's how it would be, that I would just reach a couple people here and a few people there, and that was okay. Well, then I had another dream months later. I had another dream that I was working in a restaurant, and this restaurant was in my home. And I was sharing things that I loved out of my home. I was creating these delicious dishes and these delicious recipes. And I remember at first I was worried, and I thought, well, I don't want to offend anyone, and I want to increase my customer base, so maybe I should offer things on my menu that I don't like. Things like coffee and tea and, things that I'm not a fan of. Maybe I should still offer those on my menu so that I can generate a larger customer base. And then in the dream I had the feeling, no, you need to make recipes that you feel good about, and only share the very best that you have, and only share the food that you love. Share that, don't hold back, and people will appreciate that so much. They'll drive from miles and miles away just to come eat at your restaurant in your home, just because they know you're offering the very best and you're being true to who you are. And it won't matter that you don't have everything on the menu that they love. They're going to come because of what you love. And I woke up and I knew right away what that dream meant. So I started changing my videos, and I started to go out more on a limb and share what was really in my heart, which sometimes can be a bit scary to do. And as I did this, I started to get more people interested in my YouTube channel, in my blog, on my Happy Lady Facebook page. I saw those changes happening. I saw that traffic begin to increase, and I knew it was because I was expressing who I really was. I was sharing all of the truth, not just some of it. And I felt so free being able to express myself. And those feelings of freedom really showed in my videos. And I believe that, that's what people are hungry for in these last days. They're really, really hungry for the truth. They're really, really hungry for something that's genuine. They don't want things that everybody's sharing. They don't want what they can get everywhere else. They want to hear about true, genuine experiences that they can connect with, that are real to them. That's what we're all hungry for. We're starving for that in these last days. And so as I've been more willing to go out on a limb and just open up my heart to you, I have seen quite a difference. I know with my video that I did on false traditions, that's where I made the final change. And I said, you know what? I know that a lot of my viewers and followers are of all different faiths and religions, but I've really felt prompted to just be myself 100% and share what's on my heart and not hold anything back. And I know I said in that video, if that limits my audience, so be it. It's what I feel peace about. It's what I feel that I'm supposed to do. I really thought I'd actually start to see subscribers dropping and leaving, but the opposite happened, you guys. The opposite happened. Within just a few days, I received almost 100 subscribers. That has never happened. And it really doesn't matter. I don't do this because of subscribers, and I'm not doing this to get more followers or to get more fans or likes or comments. All of that's great, but that's not why I'm doing this. But the Lord showed me, that was His way of showing me, this is what I want you to be doing. This is your divine destiny. This is your mission. This is what you were sent here to do. And I believe that the fruits of my labors were manifesting that. It was just another witness to show me this is what people are hungry for, and you're giving it to them. And this is what you're supposed to be doing. And it was a beautiful witness. Okay, for the third point, she went on to say, be different. And again, I feel like that's what I'm doing. And I know a lot of you are doing that as well. Number 4, she went on to say, be distinct, recognizably well-defined. Number 5, be happy. That's my motto. I'm the happy lady. All things happiness, happiness central. I believe that whatever you say, as long as you say it with a smile and cheerfulness in your heart, you can't go wrong. And that's truly firmly what I believe. It was so amazing to hear that from Sister Eubank. And then the best part was when she said, us women 40 and older, we now pass the torch on to you, all of the women of the next generation leading us into the last days. Now I'm 36 years old, so that included me. And it was so exciting. It was so awesome to feel her passing that torch to us. And I realized, you know, us women of the last days, we have a great responsibility on our shoulders, and it's an awesome responsibility. There is so much good that we're going to do, and so much good that we're going to bring into this world, and it's going to be life-changing. We really are going to change the world. We really are going to help usher in heaven on earth in a big way. And then she ended, I just summed up these few words, Jesus comes quickly. And again, I felt it from head to toe. Jesus comes quickly. Okay, then we were privileged to hear from Neil F. Marriott, and I absolutely loved her words. What I heard, the thing that really stood out to me, was her focus on the Lord's will, doing the Lord's will, and loving people that are hard to love, loving our enemies, loving the people who don't love us. And if you followed my last couple of videos, that's all I've talked about, is doing the Lord's will. In these latter days, we have to be able to hear and recognize and discern the Lord's voice. He's speaking to us all the time through the Spirit. And if we're not hearing that and we're not recognizing that, we're going to miss out on a lot of opportunities. I know I've talked a lot about in my last couple of videos, aligning yourself with the Lord's will so that it becomes easier, so that the things you want are also the things that the Lord wants, and that it becomes so much easier to walk with Him. She said sacrifice is required to make room for the plans of God. There it was, you guys. That was my whole video about false traditions, especially in last week's video, was that the Lord had asked me to sacrifice something for Him, something that I loved so much, that was such a part of my life and my culture and my family traditions, to give that up for Him. To give that up because I love Him more than I love those traditions. And again, to do it because it's the will of God for me. And she said right here that sacrifice is required. It's required to make room for the plans of God. So when we listen to the voice of the Lord, and He's telling us to get our homes in order and to give up certain things, and we give those things up and we make those sacrifices for Him, what we're really doing is we're making room for His plans in our life, for His beautiful, incredible plans to unfold so miracles can happen. I don't know about you, but that's what I want. That's what I've been doing. That's what this is all about. That's what my videos are all about. I was so excited to hear her say this. I was hearing all the words and the language that I had been using in my videos. In my video on false traditions, I talked all about breaches. I talked about all the different ways that the Spirit revealed to me are ways that we create breaches, you know, holes and gaps in that protective shield around our homes and around our families. The things that we're doing and the choices that we're making that create those breaches to allow the adversary to come in and attack us. I was sharing that to help bring light upon the tactics of the enemy, the tactics that he uses to get into our homes and into our families to divide us and separate us and break us up. And that's what she talked all about, was breaches. She talked about repairing the gaps, repairing those breaches. She said we are designed to give and receive love. And she talked about Isaiah. She talked about building the old waste places. And she said that these will be the ones who repair the breach. Who Isaiah was talking about, those who build the old waste places. These will be those who repair the breach. We've created these breaches in our families and around our homes and in our relationships with our loved ones and in our relationship with God. We've created these breaches through our own choices. It's so important to be aware of that so that we can not only repair those breaches, but prevent it from happening again. And she also brought awareness to this. Okay, then we were privileged to hear from Joy D. Jones. And what I loved about her talk was she focused on our divine worth. And she said worth and worthiness are not the same things. Worthiness is obtained through obedience. but we are never worth less because we sin. So I think we forget sometimes, and we put it in our mind that because we sin, we're not worth anything. But that's not true. Our worth never changes. We will always be daughters of our Heavenly Father. We will always be children of God. That never changes. Our worth never changes. But when we sin, our worthiness to receive those blessings, that's the difference. It's our worthiness to receive those blessings based on our choices. But our worth never changes. We are always worth more than we'll ever know in the eyes of our Father in heaven. She talked about virtuous thoughts bless us with confidence. She had a scripture to back that up. I'll post it right here. Virtuous thoughts bless us with confidence. If we want to be confident in all that we're doing in these last days, and in the messages that we're sharing, and in the principles that we stand for, we have to start with our thoughts. Our thoughts have to be clean and pure and holy. And if we can change our thoughts, we can change the world. So I talked all about in my last two videos how we can no longer be ignorant. Now she used a different word for that. She used the term spiritually passive, kind of the same thing. She said we can't afford to be spiritually passive in these latter days. It's easier to be spiritually passive, as I shared in my parable in my first video. It's so much easier to be ignorant because then we feel like, well, I don't have to be held responsible. I don't have to be accountable. Ignorance is bliss. We've heard that before, right? But she says in these latter days, we can't afford to do that anymore. We can't afford to think that way. We have to know the truth. And once we learn it, we have to share it with everyone. We have to help each other. Okay, and I just have to say, I absolutely loved that the choir was wearing all white. It was amazing. I talked about the color white in my last video and how the Lord wanted me to paint those picture frames in white. I was to put pictures of the Savior in those white picture frames, and I've thought so much lately about sanctification and purity and how we're to sanctify our homes and our families and ourselves. And when I saw that beautiful choir dressed all in white, it was just another confirmation that the underlying theme was purity and sanctification. So then the following hymn was True to the Faith, and the choir stood and the conductor turned to lead the congregation. Now we're used to seeing the words up on the screen so that we can follow along, but this time there were no words, and people were looking around like, oh, I don't think I know this hymn. Are we supposed to stand? She's turned and she's facing us, but okay. So at first not everyone stood. So just a few sisters popped up here and there, and then we all started looking around, and then more of us started to stand, and then finally, eventually, halfway through the first verse, everybody finally stood. And people knew most of the first verse, but then when verse 2 came, it got silent. It was so strange, you guys. It got quiet in the chapel. People didn't know the words, and not everybody knew what song to look up or what page it was on, and so people were fumbling through their phones and their books. And I had this thought come into my mind in that moment. We really need to know our hymns better. We really need to take the time to go through the songs in the hymn book and sing them, not just on Sundays, not just at church, but all the time. And by doing this, not only will we invite light into our homes and into our lives and into our families, but we're going to learn truth. We're going to learn from doing this. You know, the hymns are a prayer. They share beautiful truths. And I know I wrote a blog post about this earlier in the year about the power of music and the power of the hymn book. And I shared a lot of incredible facts about the hymn books since the very first one from the beginning of the church. And that's where we learned that beautiful truth that we have a mother in heaven was from Eliza Snow's hymn, Oh My Father. We learned from that hymn this following line. Hymns are beautiful, and I believe that if we took the time to read through a lot of those hymns that were written so many years ago, we would learn a lot of incredible truths that we didn't know before. And the Spirit can use them to testify truths to us that are new, that we haven't learned yet, or that we're learning right now and we just need that additional witness. We can get that witness through the hymns. But then there's also a real power behind that music. And as we bring that into our homes and into our lives, we're going to increase that light all around us. But here's the best part, you guys. There may come a day when you could lose everything, whether it's because of a natural disaster or you're forced to flee or whatnot, but you could go through a time where you don't have access to your scriptures or a hymn book. But if you have those hymns memorized, if you know them by heart, if you know the melodies and the words, you can break out and sing hymns wherever you're at. In your darkest moments, in the darkest places, you can bring light because you know the hymns, you know the music. And I just felt in my mind and in my heart in that moment, the women of the last days, we need to be women and mothers who know the hymns. We need to know our hymns, and we need to know our scriptures. We need to know the word. We need to memorize it. We need to have that ingrained in our minds and in our hearts. It will be a powerful tool in these last days. Okay, then of course, lastly was President Uchtdorf's amazing talk. And I loved his parable about the three sisters. Incredible. You had the sad sister, the mad sister, and the happy sister. I loved that he said, remember who you are. Remember who you are. And I have felt and heard that a lot lately. I know I shared in my last video the experience that I had with the salsa jars when I was canning tomatoes. And I had a jar explode. And I heard the word remember. Remember. And remember what this is all about. Remember why we're preparing. Remember what the last days are about. Why are they the last days? What are we preparing for? What are we ushering in? Remember who you are. Who are we? Why are we here? Why are we doing all of this? Remember. He said, don't care what other people think about you. And you guys, you know, I've learned that lesson. I got to a point where negative comments that would come in, or people who would watch my videos and didn't agree with them, those opinions and those comments didn't matter to me. I didn't let it bother me. I didn't let it affect me. I was happy and I was at peace because I knew I was doing the Lord's will. I knew I was doing what my Heavenly Father wanted me to be doing, and I had peace with that. So it didn't matter to me what other people thought about me, and I didn't let it bother me if they were angry or annoyed. I just haven't let it bother me. And you know, there's power to that. It's very liberating when you can set aside that fear and just not let it bother you. When you can just press forward in faith, in confidence, and with peace, it is so empowering. It is so liberating. He said it only matters what God thinks about you. And yes, I couldn't agree with that more. He said to love our enemies, love all. And you know, when I do get negative comments and I do see people on Facebook saying very unkind things about me and my messages, I pray for them and I send out love to them. And that's the best thing that you can do. It's what the Savior did. And it's what President Uchtdorf has counseled that we do. He talked about Lehi's dream. And it's funny because my sister and I were just talking about this the other day. We were talking about Halloween being a part of that great and spacious building. And as we're trying to hold on to the iron rod and walk towards the tree, and we're holding on as tight as we can hear our family members and people that we love and people who know us and people who don't know us mocking and ridiculing and saying hurtful things and just kind of making fun of us. And you know, it doesn't always feel good. But when you keep your eyes straight ahead and you hold tight to that rod and you focus on what's at the end and you just keep that your focus, you're able to tune all of that out. And all of that doesn't matter anymore. And that great and spacious building, whatever it is in your life, doesn't matter anymore. You no longer have a desire to even look over there. And if you leave it behind, unlike Lot's wife, you don't want to look back. There's no regrets. You don't miss that. I love that he said it will not be easy. because it's true. It's never easy. But it doesn't mean we should stop. He said, your choices make the difference in life. Press on, lift up your voice to praise. And again, we can lift up our voice to praise through the hymns. We should be singing them every day. Sing them as often as you can, in the car, when you're alone, in your prayer closet, just wherever you can. He said, the song of true discipleship is the most beautiful song. Be grateful for the coming challenges and look forward to them. And that's my message is, you know, this world isn't going to get easier. Life isn't going to get easier. You know, we only have control over our perspective and our choices and our attitude. So if we can choose to go through the same challenges and the same events of the last days that everybody else is going through, but do it with a smile and do it with peace in our hearts and hope in our hearts, then we're going to get through this and we're going to be triumphant. So I promised to share with you some tidbits from my family history archive that I found in my basement. As I got looking through this, you guys, I realized this is actually from my great-great-grandfather's funeral. He was an incredible man. He was a Davis County sheriff, and he was a well-known carpenter who helped build the white roller coaster at Lagoon. And when he passed away, these were the words that were spoken at his funeral. And I believe this was from the stake president. I'm not sure the stake that it was, but he lived in Centerville. And so I found something really powerful in here that had to do with everything that I shared in my message and everything that I had heard at women's conference. And I'm just going to quote it. He says, "Behold, here is the agency of man, and here is the condemnation of man, because that which was from the beginning is plainly manifest unto them, and they receive not the light. And every man whose spirit receiveth not the light is under condemnation. For man is spirit, as if God would say to him, you can know the truth if you will." Now I love that. He talked all about light and truth and knowledge, and he even talked a little bit about physics in there. This is from 1910, so this is pretty ancient. And I love that he said that God wants us to want to know the truth, but he respects our agency. And so if we don't want to hear it, he's not going to force it upon us. So if we hear truth, but we look for ways to justify that it's not true, then we're putting ourselves under condemnation. When we reject that truth and we reject that life, we're condemning ourselves. We're not letting in that light. We're choosing darkness over light, and that brings condemnation to our own soul. And so I love that he shared that we should want the light. And I believe that God created us to want to know the truth, to want to seek light, to want to learn, to want to be like him. And that should always be our journey. We should always be seeking truth and always be wanting to learn more, and never think for a moment that we've already learned it all, because we haven't. There is so much out there that we don't know that can only edify our lives and build us up even more. It doesn't always have to be the deep mysteries that you're searching for, but sometimes just these other things, such as having the light shed on false traditions and learning the truths about things that you thought were true that actually aren't. Things that you thought were good and bringing light into your life, but really were bringing in darkness. And so that's the truth we should really be seeking for, is the truth that's exposing the light on the darkness, so that we can clean up our lives, clean out our homes, that we can become sanctified and purified before the Lord. And so I really like that. I really appreciated that. These words that were from 1910, so well over 100 years ago. And so hope you enjoy that. Hope you can take away something from that as well. I just wanted to add that the root behind anger is always fear. So I've learned and I've noticed that when people get angry at these messages, or they find my video and it makes them angry, it's because I've talked about something in there that struck a chord with them. And it struck a chord with them because it's maybe something they've been fighting in their own life, or maybe a truth that's crossed their path and they haven't wanted to embrace it because of one reason or another, and so they become angry. But really, like I said, we need to let go of that fear and not let it dominate our lives, because fear is of darkness, and we're told to fill our lives with light and be women of righteousness and of light. We can't have that fear. So I know every time I try to keep these videos short, it just never happens, but I really felt that that's for a reason. I felt the Spirit tell me the length of these videos is sort of a filtering mechanism, because I noticed from people that were commenting through other posts that because the video was too long, they didn't have the patience, they didn't want to hear it, they had no interest in letting go of Halloween and no interest in the message, and it was just too long, so they gave up. And that's fine because they weren't ready to hear it. But then you had a group of people who wanted it to be longer, and it wasn't long enough. And after watching that, they wanted to find all the other videos. That's the group of people who are ready. They're hungry for it. Their ears are open, their eyes are open, and they're ready to hear it. So I'm no longer going to apologize for these videos being long, because now I see the purpose and the wisdom in that. So now I want to address some of the comments that I noticed from posts where people had tagged me. So these were people that I don't know, but who had found my video through other people's posts all over social media. I noticed that the majority of people responded really well to the message and were really supportive of the video. There were a few people, however, it was really interesting with what they thought and what they had to say. So I just wanted to address some of those concerns in this video. I heard people say that the minute I started talking about sort of the ugly truth behind Halloween, they became fearful of it, and so they couldn't watch the video anymore because they thought it might invite something in. Now, I know I said in that video that I wasn't going to sugarcoat the truth, that I was going to share with you what the Spirit had showed me. However, I just shared a tiny bit that I felt was appropriate enough to share on the video, but I posted the links in the video comments, so if you wanted more detail, you could go see for yourself. But there was a lot I did not put in the video for that reason. But I saw some people come to the defense of the message, and one viewer mentioned that in the Book of Mormon, Jacob felt sad that he was going to have to make his audience feel uncomfortable with the truth that he had to share with them. And this was in Jacob 2. But the truth needed to be told because he loved them and the Lord loved them, and they needed to learn the truth no matter how hard it was to hear. And that's the difference with me, is I don't fear evil. I don't know what it is, you guys, but about 3 or 4 years ago, I no longer feared evil. But just because I'm not afraid of it doesn't mean I want to allow it to come into my home. So there's a difference there. But you know what? We're not designed to fear evil. God didn't make us to be afraid of evil. He didn't design us to be afraid of the darkness. We are so much more powerful than that darkness. Why should we be afraid? Why should we be afraid to learn the truth and open up our eyes to what's really going on? We shouldn't be afraid of that when we know who we really are, when we remember whose we really are, who we belong to, who our Father is, and we understand that power that we have access to and what we're capable of. We should not be afraid of darkness, and we should not tolerate it in our lives. You know, the truth is, Satan fears us. He fears righteous women. There is nothing more terrifying to him than a righteous mother. I can promise you that. That is truth. If we truly believe that, we have no reason to fear him. You know, we can learn through history that in any war or any battle, you have to learn the strategies and the tactics of the enemy if you want to overcome them in battle. Now, all throughout this life and throughout these last days, we're facing all kinds of battles, personal battles in our own life, and bigger battles that we share as a whole, as a community, as a nation. So we're going to be faced with these battles, but we can't forget who won the war. Christ has already won the victory. He has already won. So we have to remember that. And if you can remember that and you believe that, you have no reason to be afraid. You have no reason to doubt. A new sister in my ward spoke on Sunday during sacrament meeting, and I loved her talk. And she shared in there, she brought up a lot of these points also from women's conference that I wanted to share. And it sounds like a lot of us are on the same page and we were hearing the same message. and she pointed out the use of the word pornography in general conference, and how that word didn't start getting used until, I can't remember the date, I want to say it was the 60s, and they started using that word, and when they first used it, people were shocked, and it hurt their ears, and they didn't want to hear it, and it gave them a strange feeling, and they felt the spirit leave, and people really struggled with that term being used. But over the years, it started being used more and more and more to where now we hear it all the time in conference and in messages and in counsel from our leaders every Sunday. And it's a word we're so used to now that it doesn't hurt our ears anymore, and it doesn't make the spirit leave the room. We know that it's an ugly truth that has to be faced. We can't ignore it. It's an ugly truth that we have to learn about. We have to learn the tactics of the adversary and how he uses those tactics to pull us in to that addiction. And we know, and it's kind of the same way it was for me with Halloween. It was an ugly truth, but I had to learn the tactics. I had to learn how the adversary was using Halloween as one of those tactics to pull us in and create breaches in our home and in our lives to allow him to come in and create havoc. It actually took learning about those dark truths to get me to turn away from that false tradition. Had I not learned about those dark truths, I don't think my eyes would have been opened. I don't think I would have felt that there was anything wrong with Halloween. Something interesting I learned last week was in a video by Bruce Allen, and I've shared his messages before. He learned one day the Spirit told him that darkness actually travels faster than light. And his wife thought he was absolutely crazy. One night, while watching the Discovery Channel, it was verified on there that researchers had discovered that darkness moves faster than light. Because when light comes into the room, darkness is gone. It's so fast. And so I just thought that was funny. You know, we don't need to be afraid of the dark. It moves fast. If we're filled with light and we come into the room, that darkness is gone. We have nothing to fear. It fears us. When you live with fear, that fear actually dims your light. And if your light's dim, well, then darkness and evil is not going to be afraid of you. You want to be as bright as you can be to cause that darkness and evil to be terrified of you. So you can't have that fear dimming your light and holding you back. Okay, lastly, I wanted to point out that there were some people who tried to discredit the sources that I shared in that video. And you know, I checked out those sources before I posted them. I posted a link underneath the video description in that first video on false traditions, but then I also posted the sources throughout the video. And I checked out those sources, and what I found when I was doing this was that you had two groups of people. You had the people where the sources came from, and then the people who supported those sources, who were anti-Halloween, who understood the truth behind it because they had experienced it, because they had come from those dark places and those dark traditions, and they practiced witchcraft or were part of the occult, and they were sharing their personal experiences from what they had witnessed and learned. Then you had another group of people who were trying to discredit those sources and say that they were false, they weren't true, they were fiction, they were made up. But then those people writing those articles were pro-Halloween. They were practicing Wiccans, or they referred to themselves, in one popular article at the very end of the conclusion, the author wrote, "Don't bother complaining to us pagans. We've already heard every lame excuse in your book." And so he just kind of summarized at the end all these, what he thought was ridiculous claims about Halloween that just weren't true, that came from the pagans. So you had two groups of people, those who had experienced it and left that dark world because of what they knew to be true. So they were now bringing out the light and sharing that truth with what they had personally witnessed and exposing it in videos and articles. And then you had another group of people who were saying that all of this was not true because they supported Halloween. So what I want to point out is it's so important that wherever you get your sources and wherever you look to them, look who the authors of those articles are. Read about who they are and where they stand, and that will help you discern the truthfulness of that source. So the sun is changing directions in my car, and it's getting bright in here. But I just want to say, lastly, what I noticed is that there were people who didn't feel comfortable with me talking so freely about how I hear the Spirit speak to me, because I'll say it in terms of, the Spirit said to me or the Lord said to me, and that rubbed them the wrong way. Anyways, what I want to say about that is it is so important in these latter days for us to learn the voice of the Lord, to be able to hear it, to be able to learn what it sounds like, to be able to recognize it, and to be able to discern it. But not only that, to be able to be obedient to it. And I'm just going to give you a couple of tips of how I learned to hear the voice of the Lord, because it's not just me. He speaks to all of us every day. Everyone. The way that we typically describe it is, we'll say, well, I felt that I was to do this, or I felt something come over me, or I felt prompted to do this or that, or I felt prompted to say this or that. Or we'll say, I heard in my mind, do this, do that, or I had this thought or this idea. And, over the years, I started to learn that I didn't need to say anymore, I had a thought, I had a premonition, I had a feeling, that I could replace that with simply just saying, that was the Lord. That was the Lord. Anything that inspires you to do good is of the Lord. And so as I started giving Him that credit, I started hearing Him even more in my life. I started recognizing Him more often. So instead of saying, I had a thought, I had a feeling, I had a premonition, or I heard this in my mind, or I felt that in my heart, I would say, the Lord said this to me. The Lord told me this. The Lord told me that. The Lord showed me this. The Lord guided me here. The Spirit told me this. The Spirit taught me that. The Spirit said to me. The Spirit impressed upon me. And as I started giving credit and glory to the Lord, my life changed. My life changed, and it's just made all the difference. So in these last days, we need to be women, and not just us women, but everyone, as children of God, we need to better be able to hear and discern the voice of the Lord and recognize that and give that glory to the Lord. And I believe it makes Him happy when I say, the Lord told me, the Spirit told me, because I'm giving Him that credit. I believe that we all should give Him that credit and that glory. So as my sister and I were talking about women's conference and all the things that we loved so much about it, it was just awesome because I had this thought and I just kind of laughed about it, and I said to her, I kind of feel like Marty McFly from Back to the Future when he goes back in time and he goes to his parents' high school dance, and he gets up on the stage and he starts playing music from the future, from his time, and he thinks it's such amazing music and he's so excited and passionate about it, and he pours it out. He pours out his heart and soul through his music, and then he looks around and people just don't get it. They're not ready for it. So he said something to the effect of, I guess you guys aren't ready for that yet. And I told my sister and she agreed. I said, I feel like the things that I'm learning, the things that I'm being taught in my own life through the Spirit, are things that people just aren't ready to hear yet. But I so want to just share it because it's so awesome and it's blessing my life in so many ways and it's so amazing. But I have to be careful because I feel like people aren't ready for it yet. And I see that when people are frustrated or they become angry with what I'm sharing. And it's meant to be received with light and love and to edify and uplift. And so I feel that way. And she laughed and she said, you are ahead of your time. She says, I've always felt that about you. You're always one step ahead. She says, everything that you've been doing and sharing and practicing, the leaders are just now sharing in conference, and you've been doing it for so long now. And she says, I've always felt that about you. I've always felt that you're always ahead of the game. You're always in the future. You're just always ahead of everything. But I feel like in these last days, things are going to be speeding up. They're already speeding up. Time is going so fast. And I feel like we're all going to get caught up to speed. And that's what I feel is going to happen, is we're all going to get caught up to speed spiritually. If we're headed in that direction and we're on that path, we're all going to get caught up to that same place very soon. So I'm excited about that. And I know a lot of you out there feel just like me, so I'm not alone. I always tell my sister, I can't wait for the millennium because then we're all going to be on the same page, and it's going to be so much easier to live the higher laws of the gospel because everyone will be doing it, and these false traditions will all be gone, and we'll just have that heaven culture. We'll be literally living in heaven on earth. It will be so beautiful, so incredible. You won't want to live any other way. it'll be so much easier in that time to live a sanctified and holy life. And lastly, I just want to sum this up and say that in these last days, we need to take a stand. We can no longer sit back and be afraid and not take those chances and take those risks for the Lord. We need to stand up for what's right. We need to link arms and do it together and support each other and uplift each other. Seek to edify each other and give all glory to the Lord, because you know what? He is doing something amazing on this earth right now. He is doing something amazing in all of our lives, and we're all feeling the effects of it, and we're all going to be benefited and blessed by it. So in these last days, let's all take a stand. Let's all join together, support each other, and do all that we can to be women of light, women of the last days, women of righteousness. And not just us women, but you men too. Let's all be powerful for the Lord, incredible children of God, and let's do all that we can to prepare this earth to meet the Savior when He comes. Thank you so much, guys. Thanks for being a part of this message. As always, I keep you in my prayers. I love hearing from you. I appreciate all your support. Hope you have a wonderful week, and I will see you next time.